This is the Mack Caddie, a cinnamon caddis fly that no fish will let pass by, and we're gonna give it a try. So grab a cup of chill as we sit back and go on the Vise with the FlyOlderGuy. On the Vise, we have a size 14 dry fly hook. It's a standard size. I'm going to load up the bobbin with some Danville, a 6/0, and that's a tan, like a tan, a light brown. It's going to look good. This fly has a lighter color to it. It's like a light caddis. So I can get the thread started there towards the back, wrap that in, and then we'll trim off the tag end of the thread, and then we'll just get it out of the way. Gonna put a little bit of a thread base on the back end here. Gonna wrap some material in. I don't want it to get too slippery, so I give myself a little bit of a base on the back end. Whenever I'm tying in material, I like to have some thread base there. And the first thing we're gonna tie in is some small gold wire. The wire is gonna help us just hold down the hackle. We're gonna palmer it around the hackle. So we're gonna wrap that in on the back end there with a little pinch wrap. I want to try to keep it on the side of the hook as much as possible. And it's also gonna help build up a little bit of a taper to the body. When you tie in the materials, it does help with the taper. So we'll get that locked in. And we're gonna grab our metallic Madeira material. I love this stuff. I use it quite often. It gives it a nice little sparkle, you know? So we can wrap that in adjacent to the wire. Just gonna pinch it in again. You can adjust it after one wrap so you get the length right. You don't have to trim it off. Just wrap over it. A little bit of thread up to the front, back towards the back. I want to get very close to that bend. So I'm holding those materials down right at the bend. And then I'll bring the thread up a little bit more and grab some dubbing. This is a Superfine cinnamon dubbing. So I'm going to take a nice clump of that to get started. I'm looking to build up a decent thickness on this body. So we'll give ourselves a nice noodle. You can see it's not too tight of a noodle. It's got a little bit of body to it because we're trying to build it up here. So I got a couple wraps of bare thread back to the bend where I want to start the dubbing, and moving forward, I'll stop if it looks a little loose and give it a twist to tighten it up, but basically building up a nice tapered body. A little bit past the midpoint. Actually, we want to go quite a bit further, so I'll grab a little bit more dubbing. And we're going to probably leave, I'd say, like 2 eye lengths behind the hook eye to tie in our wings here. So adding a little bit more of the Superfine cinnamon dubbing. Get some nice wraps, then we're going to overlap a little bit again to build up that taper. Give it a nice look to it. Nothing too thick, but just a gentle taper up. And tie it down right there in the front. That's it. 2, maybe, this is about 2 eye lengths there. That's about right. So we'll grab our hackle feather, and I'm using a white hackle for this. And I'll go probably a size smaller, so it's a 16. It's a little bit proud of 16, but that'll work for this. I stripped off some of the stem there and tying it in right next to that hook eye. See, I gave it 2 gentle wraps, and then I can adjust that stem so that it's not going to crowd that hook eye at all. I'm going to wrap that stem in nice and tight. You don't want that slipping anywhere. Looking good. Make sure I'll wrap it down. And then I'll rest my thread in the bobbin holder and grab my hackle pliers. You're going to want to use hackle pliers for this fly. It helps a couple different ways. First of which is just the ease with which you can, orient the hackle here. I'm not worried about my fingers and slipping out of my fingers. It's clipped securely in there. I like to start one wrap in front of the dubbing and then work my way back with several wraps. I mean, this is 6, 7 wraps. It's a lot of wraps back. It's a heavily hackle fly. It's going to help it float. You're going to get more attention this way too. So with the hackle pliers, again, the weight of them can hold that hackle down, so you can grab the Madeira and start to wrap it around the hackle and lock that in place. You can palmer it around quite a few times. I do end up, I think I trap some fibers there. Not the end of the world. The wing is going to go back. It's going to push those fibers back anyway. So we'll shorten up that thread, and then I can lock down the Madeira. A couple tight wraps around the Madeira to lock it in. Once it's in tight, slipping the thread around a little bit, gotta twist it in there. All right, looking good. I can get that Madeira out of there. We'll grab the scissors, trim it out. Nice. You can see the hackles a little bit wonky there, but I can release the pliers and I can tie back a little bit, the hackle in the front. Kind of build up sort of a thread dam just to straighten those hackle fibers up a little bit. Let's see, and then we'll put the bobbin back on the cradle, and then we'll wrap our wire through. So I'm going to use the smaller material clip for the wire. Definitely helps with this. This wire slips out of fingers all the time. It's going to bounce around on you. So again, palmering it forward. If you don't think about it too much, you probably won't trap too many fibers. You can see I'm just sort of wrapping it as evenly spaced as I can. Get it up to the front. It's just reinforcing that Madeira, and it's giving it a nice gold flash. We got the sparkle, like a diamond sparkle from the Madeira, and we got a gold sparkle from the wire. So it's got a lot of nice attraction going on the body right now, which is one of the things that kind of sets it apart. It's got a lot of that attraction in the body with the sparkle and the shine. And that's what I like. That's why it's the Mack. It's the Mack. So we're going to grab my material scissors. I'm going to trim off that little bit of wire. And then the extra bit of hackle hanging off the back, we're also going to trim out. And you can see there's 1 or 2 fibers that hang down back there, but that actually gives it a little bit like a tail look almost. So I leave them there. It's not too messy. It adds to the fly. So just lock that in a little bit more. Those fibers, lock them back. And then we're going to tie in our wing. Now, it's a double wing. I'm going to use a white CDC as an underwing. So I'm going to grab 2 CDC feathers that are about the same and place them together so that the tips bow out away from each other. And then just sort of put them together, get those tips squared off a little bit, and we're going to measure about 1 shank length, lock them in with a few wraps, and pull back the top of the feather, overlap the 2, and then lock them down. And that's what I like to do. I like to do a doubled over CDC feather. You've seen that before on a couple of the flies that I tie. I like that style. I just think it makes it a firmer wing. It's going to help support the elk hair once we tie the elk hair in too. So it's a decent underwing. And I trimmed off a few of the wild fibers, and then I'm going to trim off the excess stem. Looking good. You can see, like, right now it actually looks like a decent fly that you could throw out there. But we're going to beef it up. We're going to give it that nice elk hair. And we're going to use a bleached elk hair. I've got it right here from my local fly shop. It's a nice fresh pack. The tips are nice on this. I'm grabbing a decent sized clump. Not too much, but you don't want to go like pencil thin either. So I've got my clump. I'm going to trim that out and then fan it out a little bit and then pull out any of the loose fluff, the shorter fibers. You'll see me getting them out of here now. There's always this little bit of cleaning after you trim. Make sure you have all the uneven parts pulled apart. Gonna grab my large stacker. This way I can feed those wild tips in the large stacker first. It's a little bit of a pain. I don't think they all got in there maybe, but we'll tap that down. We're gonna check those tips are nice, actually pretty nicely aligned, and I'll feed it into my smaller stacker. Get a nice tighter stack. Same thing, just give it a few taps. Give it a little bit of an angle tap down. Help them pack together. Looking good. So we'll grab them up. And now we're gonna measure it again about 1 shank length here. And then what we want to do is we want to trim them off right where we're going to tie them in. So I trim off those ends, bring it back to the hook, and we want to line it right on the hook eye. Okay. We're going to straighten those ends out a little bit more. We want to have them square. You do want to have them, it's kind of important that they're square. The way we're going to tie it down, those look a little better. So we're going to give it one loose wrap and another loose wrap, and then we'll pull it tight right there. Each time we go towards ourselves, we pull it a little bit, not crazy because you'll snap the thread, but definitely each wrap is a nice tight wrap after those first two, and several wraps around. This is what's locking this elk hair in, are these wraps. And you can see I got a little piece of CDC out there on the bottom. If you ask me, it looks like a buggy leg, so I'm not concerned. So several wraps. You see all these wraps. I put one back up towards the front. I trapped a little piece of elk hair, not the end of the world. Several wraps, and then let it go. Give it a pull, and you see the elk hair didn't move. Then you're good. It's locked in. All right, so a couple wraps for good measure. But then once you got it in, what you want to do is you want to grab the whip finish tool and you give it a nice solid whip finish. I always give it at least five turns here. So 2, 3, 4, and 5. Very nice. Get a little elk hair on the loose. So when we grab the scissors to trim off the thread, we can just kind of take care of that little elk hair on the loose. Looking good. Anything else we need to trim off? We'll give it a little inspection. Quick spin. Tiny hair there. Maybe I want to trim that out, I think. How does it look? Looks all right. It's a little wonky on that one. I think we'll trim that one out. What do you think? Think it needs a trim? I don't know. I'm usually pretty patient, but yeah, see that one right there? That's sticking out. So we'll give that guy a little trim. because we're going to glue down the thread with a little bit of this thin UV resin, and we're going to need to access the thread. So we got that little piece of hair out of the way, and then tiny drips, and put one little drop on the top, and then just sort of smooth it around as much as possible, like a tiny drop coming out right on the bottom. But really, I'm just using that tip to smooth the resin around the thread all the way. Then I'll grab the little UV torch, and we'll torch it, 20 seconds or so. Rotate it, try to get all the sides covered with the torch, and that's gonna help seal those threads. I mean, we did do a whip finish there, and it's sort of like, a whip finish on top of the hair. So we want to make sure it's sealed and locked in nice. So I'm gonna give it also a little bit of shine. It makes it look good. The Mack likes to be shining. He likes to look good. Preen it out a little bit, and you can see it's got a beautiful look to it. The Mack Caddie. That's the fly. And that was the tie. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay fly.